Hi guys. I just started this over again all because I spent all that time looking for this, and as soon as I stopped the video I found it. But basically it was getting triggering. I was looking for something. So this is gonna probably be my only video. I take back what I said. I'm just gonna make one long video about my entire life, because every time I kept trying to take a piece, like talk about my eating disorder, for instance, it just ended up being, especially talking about my eating disorder, it ended up just being like my whole life. So since that video I want to make, I'm basically like, I'm just gonna make a whole life video. But I took 2 hours to talk about it, so I'm gonna try to cut it to 30 to 45 minutes, which is my goal for this. Also, I was gonna try to do my makeup at the same time because I really looked so bad. And I was like, if it's gonna be boring to listen to, at least it could be more interesting to watch. So here we go again. Also, I just want to re-emphasize, I'm 38 weeks pregnant, and that's probably partly why I'm just like doing this. Also, like I said, my fiance just started working. I'm home alone all day, and I've been really bad about doing anything productive. And instead, I just keep thinking about the past, partly because I think the present is a little bit scary. The anticipation of having a baby terrifies me. I'm so excited for the baby, but the having the baby, that does not sound fun. And I'm a little like, I've done some studying about it, but I'd rather just talk to my camera and talk about my past and like really ignore the fact I'm gonna go into labor here soon. But anyways, here we go. And I hope this eyelash thing doesn't go as bad as it did, and that's another reason I had to restart. If they go on sloppy, they go on sloppy. This is just for the sake of this video. But here we go. I'm gonna talk about my life, guys. I'm trying to make this interesting, and I'm so sorry if it's boring, but you can always not watch it. So yeah, basically I was born in Flint, Michigan, moved to Virginia when I was 2. I'm the youngest of 4. 2 older sisters and an older brother, and then my parents are still married. I would say I have a very wholesome, solid family. I'm very blessed, I will say that. But even though my story I'm about to make sound like the worst ever, like my whole life's a tragedy, but it is what it is. I'm not trying to say that. I don't know. I'm just gonna tell it what it is. I wonder how other people. Honestly, I don't care how other people perceive my life, because it's more about, how I perceived it. But I don't mean to make it sound like it was the worst thing ever, but it kind of was rough, so I can't really help that. So basically, though, 2 to 8 were like maybe too good. I had like a perfect childhood, homeschooled, babied as the youngest of 4 kids. I was kind of spoiled, you could say. Honestly, I was kind of a brat. Like I was a good kid. Like I was very shy and quiet, and I was always in la la daydream world. But I had trouble getting along with other kids, to be quite honest. Like I wasn't that cool, and I had I don't know. Little girls are tricky, but I don't know. I just remember not getting along with other girls or liking other little girls very much. But I had a great childhood for those years. We homeschooled, like I said, so my mom, stay-at-home mom, whatever. Wow. So basically, we were part of, we did gymnastics, we did dance, we did soccer, we did homeschool co-op. So it's not like we didn't see other kids, but for the most part, it was just mostly me, and my siblings were really close. But yeah, we had friends, mostly homeschool friends, and we would do a lot of things with them. Like, we lived in a very historic town of Virginia, so we'd go play the recorder, dress up in the old-fashioned clothes, and perform at the little Jamestown, Henricus, whatever. And that was fun. We had a pool through our backwoods. We'd swim in every day in the summer. I just had a really good childhood, and I would swing on the swings all the time. I was always in daydream world for the most part. I was always daydreaming, and we used to make home videos a lot. So I have like a lot of videos of my childhood. We used to record a lot of stuff before social media, but also we didn't really watch a lot of TV or anything, which was honestly great. Like we watched Arthur and PBS, but we didn't really watch, yeah. And I will say, like, we were raised very Christian, and as much as I believe in God, that's probably where some of the most trauma is and stuff. Like, so basically we could have been stricter. Like, it's not like we just wore dresses or anything crazy, but it was more like preference things. Like, my dad he liked my mom for being kind of a tomboy almost, because his mom was like, I don't know, he liked my mom for reasons he didn't like his own mother. Like, my mom's really slim, really skinny, so he liked that. He liked that she didn't really like wear makeup or nail polish. She was grew up kind of poor, so I mean, she was just very much outdoorsy and stingy, I guess you could say. Like, she could save every penny. So my parents, like, we had money, but we almost acted poor. Like, we always had a nice house. That's something my dad cared a lot about. But when it came to, like, how we lived, like, we would home make a lot of our clothes. My mom always liked to make a lot of our clothes, and everything was made homemade. My mom was pretty strict on, like, food and stuff, so this is going to come up with the eating disorder, because, like, I found out later my mom had an eating disorder for a long time, so a lot of things, I think, even though she recovered, she was a nutritionist from, like, college. I mean, my parents met at Cornell, and, like, my mom majored in as a dietitian, so, like, she was very focused on health, and we had kind of strict things on food, so I had early on things about that, and, like, she never, like, splurged. She never really, like, she'd always kind of, like, eat like a bird, kind of, so I picked up on that stuff, just later in life. But yeah, basically I had a great childhood, though. It's not like we were super strict. Like, I still, like, we got to cook a lot. It was kind of fun. We did a lot of cooking and baking and all sorts of things. But great childhood. Like I said, we were raised Christian, though, and we weren't allowed to paint our nails. We weren't allowed to, that's what I was about to say. We weren't allowed to just do a lot of stuff. We weren't allowed to dress immodest at all. We weren't allowed to get our ears pierced till we were 18 and stuff. Like, we weren't really allowed to express ourselves and stuff, so, like, I was always a little upset about that. So was my other sister, but my oldest sister was even, like, worse. Like, she would talk about, I don't know how this happened, but she got, like, super legalistic about stuff at a pretty young age. Like, she thought, like, jeans were a sin and stuff, like, worse than my parents. Like, I don't know where she got it from, but that kind of made us think crazy. So me and my sister used to wish we could do a lot more with our clothes and just be girlier, because we weren't really allowed to at all. I mean, honestly, I did, though, a little. Like, I dressed up in fairy dresses a lot when I was little. And but yeah, anyways, then I was 8. We moved to Flint, Michigan, and I think that's just, like, yeah, everything drastically changed. I was just a huge culture shock, and this is when my self-esteem took a huge blow, because for some reason, it's not like we were involved in homeschool co-op as usual. We did piano lessons. I was in ballet. But of all the places I wanted to fit in, the inner city like, we went to an inner city church, and we were very involved. My parents were, like, the main people to, like, run the church almost. Like, we had, in the summer, like, 4 nights a week, we did, like, a program where my mom made a meal, and we'd do, like, play outside, like double dutch, and then we'd learn about God and stuff. I was not focused on God at all. I was so preoccupied in my mind because I wanted to fit in so bad, and I was definitely, like, an outcast, and immediately extreme culture shock, but also, like, pretty much at first I always looked up to them, like they were better than me, but I think A lot of that's because I got bullied almost immediately. Anything I would try so hard to fit in, like do cornrows in my hair. I would try to I learned how to double dutch, like with my sisters, like at home and stuff. Like I would practice. Being homeschooled, I had free time to do some of this stuff. Like, so I learned how to braid my hair. I got like all those barrettes and stuff, but like I even put beads at the end once, and I got in so much trouble. My parents thought I was spending way too much time on things, and I was being vain and stuff, so I get in trouble. But I was trying so hard to fit in. I tried to get my mom to buy me clothes to fit in, but like I remember being 8 and seeing a girl with like just a little tube top at church, and I just was like, I was so jealous of them because of like the inner city kids who had like a rough life, because honestly I think I felt neglected a lot because like my parents put a lot of energy and time into them, and so did all the other church leaders, but for some reason I was just like treated like an adult pretty much, even though I was like 8, so it didn't make sense. But attention wasn't put towards me because I wasn't an inner city kid. It didn't make sense. So I got really bitter and quiet and angry and introspective and observed everything, but like had just so much anger, and it grew and it grew and it grew a lot. Like I could think of just so many things that happened, and I just wanted so bad to fit in to that. Like I said, my mom doesn't understand it because she's like, well, we were around other people. Why didn't you care about like having other friends? Well, I don't know. I actually didn't want to fit. I guess you could say I had a pride issue. Like I didn't want to fit in with homeschoolers that were kind of lame. I felt like homeschoolers were lame, and I started to really want to be perceived as something I wasn't. And I would like pray I'd be black, and I would cry about it. And I just felt like the only way to be cool was to be black and to be ghetto, whatever. And like they did expose me to a whole lot, as much as they sheltered me. So I don't know. I don't blame myself too much for why I was so drawn to that. Like it was just such a shock. I would see like the prostitutes in the corners, and like there was like a drug house right across the street from our church, and I was intrigued, like way too intrigued. But that's also because we were so strict, and like we weren't allowed to have them at our house because they could steal from us. We weren't allowed to go to their house, so it was like only at church really I was allowed to be around them, and I just hated that. I wanted to be friends. I would try. My mom would go. My mom would do a few things, but like I grew very angry at my mom too, because I'll talk about that later. But I just grew to be very angry at my parents, at mostly the church leaders, because they would pick favorites of like the kids and put so much energy and time into other kids, but never me. Like if it was a birthday, they would sing to them, but they didn't sing for my birthday. Or actually it was someone else's birthday right next to my birthday, and they sang to them and not to me. And like stuff like that would just, like that was the adults' fault. Like that was my parents and the other adults' fault, not the kids' fault. So I was so angry all the time at the adults. Like honestly, adults treated me really wrongly when I was younger. I remember another helper said I had a big stomach once and was like making fun of me, and I don't know, it was the adults more so than the kids that I was really angry about to this day, because like they're just kids, they're just acting out. They didn't know what to do with me. I didn't fit in. I was very quiet. So as much as I was bullied, what equally hurt was just like, because I was so quiet, I got ignored completely all the time. I learned how to double dutch, and they would drop the ropes when it was my turn. Literally, like, this happened multiple times. It's my turn. I'd learned how to double dutch, so I could double dutch, and they'd just drop the ropes. Stuff like that would happen all the time. I remember I'd try to, like, when I did try to say something once, like, this girl was like, "You're white, you can't say that." Like, I mean, the gist. And I wore like, did I say this part? I wore like a black coat once, and this girl told me I couldn't wear it because I was white, because that was like one of the things I did try to fit in, like the fur hood, because I like begged my mom to get me this coat because I could fit in better. And first time I ever wore it, this girl was like so mad. She's like, "You can't wear that, you're not black, only black people can wear that." Like, and it just didn't even make sense. it just didn't even make sense. But the kids will be kids, you know. Like I said, I'm more mad at the adults because, like, I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I was supposed to know better. I was supposed to be good, well behaved, and I never did really act out. But I just grew angry, and that became a real problem. So I was in ballet too, and at first I had a lot of anger there too because, again, it's kind of a toxic environment. I was in a lot of toxic environments, so that was a lot of body image stuff, and I was held back, and I had a chubby stage for a little, just a slight chubby stage, but, you know, like, I feel like they held me back too because I was a little slow to pick up, I won't lie. But I just, yeah, they did a lot of favoritism in ballet too, of course. There's a lot of competition. And that is one thing, I did start to grow to like ballet. I hit like a growth spurt, and I had more of a dancer's body, and I was like fitting in more, and I was more accepted, and I made friends there, and I loved ballet. It became like my family and my home, but it was still really toxic, and I had tons of anxiety at dance, and like I also did piano, and I sick to my stomach every time I had to go to lessons. I would cry. I had a really strict Russian teacher. My family was very focused on like performance and like being very. My dad liked to brag about stuff a lot. Like I don't know. Me and my dad have an interesting relationship, but he's a little bit prideful. I'm not gonna lie. He's a good, great guy. He's Christian. I love him to death. But if there's one thing I had to say, he can be kind of angry. And my parents have an interesting dynamic. But, I mean, I will say I'm just mostly grateful because they've been married and loyal. And that makes me think that's possible, and that's what I want. And that's what I think. I think it takes having that example a lot of times to really think that can happen for you. So I'm really grateful because, like, that's what I want. I want to get married, and I'm engaged finally. I would love to be married, but yeah, I want that to last forever. So that's one thing I'm thankful for, is I have that example. My parents are still together, but it is, I mean, they did bicker a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they were never like affectionate. So that's one thing I always wanted, was more affection and romanticism in my relationship. But my mom, she's very, now I'm rambling. But basically, yeah, so Flint really messed me up in this part. To this day, like, I don't know what happened, but I just wanted so badly to be something I wasn't. So I'm pretty much cool with being white now and everything, you know? But I also wanted to be, like, super ghetto. And not even, like, because I think with my body image issues and with my body image issues and, like, the fact that I was raised so religious and, like, we never talked about our bodies. We never were taught about our bodies. I was not taught about womanhood or anything about anything. I think that kind of led me down the path of wanting to be, not like I wanted to be a guy, but with not wanting curves, not wanting to be a woman, not being able to express my femininity at all. We all dressed like boys. We wore like basketball shorts and stuff growing up. And so I kind of just took the route of, like, I wanted to be super, more like a guy in ghetto. Like, since I couldn't dress pretty or feel pretty, and I never did feel pretty. So I wanted to be, like, kind of more scary at that point, because I had all this anger too. I felt like I wanted to be, like, more like what a guy could be like, with my ski mask, super ghetto. But one thing I will say I'm glad about being raised Christian is I never fully went the full mile of, like, trying to, I did do a whole lot with my identity, but I've kind of been able to come back to, like, no, the only way to truly be happy is to accept my identity, which is I'm a white girl. That's it. I can't change that. So thankfully I didn't try to dye my skin. I didn't try to turn into a guy. But for a long time, my image looked crazy, and it had a lot to do with just, but the thing is, my image never fit, my physical image never fit like, I wanted to look super skinny. Basically, my fiance is what I wanted to look like. Tall, skinny, black guy with dreads. So that's my type, apparently. because that's what I wanted to be. Since I couldn't be it, that's who I'm with. And that's another thing, but it's kind of where our relationship started out pretty rough, because I think a lot of that was my identity crisis, that I had to be with him, like codependency out the wazoo, talk about toxic, but now we're more in love. But that took years, and it's just started out rough, because I wouldn't say white girls were his type or anything. Like, I'm the first white girl he's ever been with, but that makes me happy. I cannot lie. Here we go. But basically, man, I said basically way too many times. Flint really did affect me, and my parents really regret moving there, because they've just seen me as, I've just been a whole problem, and they know a lot of it stemmed from that, or at least I've made sure they knew that, because I didn't speak a lot, and I didn't express myself or my anger, and so later on, they would find out, and now I can't shut up, because I was very quiet, and I held everything in, and I, hated my parents. That's when I started to hate them. I felt neglected, you could say. I didn't feel like they noticed what was going on. They didn't try to get to see, how I was mentally, and yet I was expected. A lot was expected, I felt like, and not much was, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of, I have a very loving family, but it's I didn't feel loved. There wasn't a feeling of unconditional love growing up. I did not feel unconditionally loved, and I still, now I know they'll love me no matter what, and yet, I kind of know where that not feeling unconditionally loved comes from, because I still feel semi-judged, and I could definitely be excommunicated from my family, because they are that religious, and I have kind of gone off the deep end before, and they'll always love me. I know that, but yeah, I think, yeah, my mom's called me demon possessed before. They've really made me feel yeah, I mean, I've always had shame and guilt, and I mean, they really can make you feel that too. But anyways, I don't know, the sidetrack. I wasn't ballet, I wasn't all these things, but it really affected my identity, all this stuff. So then, now all of a sudden, we're moving again when I'm 14, and I categorized my life in chunks. Whenever we moved, everything just changed so drastically. Because once we moved from Flint to here, to Oxford, Ohio, where it's totally different culture, I had a culture shock again. Only this time I wasn't cool about it, because I was actually waiting. There was no discussion. All of a sudden, just announcing we're moving. I felt so wronged, because I was waiting till I could finally grow up and fit into this culture that I was bullied for so long, and next thing you know, it's just taken from under my feet, and now again I'm having to just accept basically the identity of how I just look, which isn't how I think. Who I am here isn't who I am here, so I got really triggered, because now, I mean, in Flint, at least I could go around and be around that culture that I wanted so badly to associate with. Now we're moving to another culture, and I guess I look like your typical white girl, and I just wasn't okay with that. In my head, I wanted so bad to be black, or at least that's the culture I wanted to be fitting in with and around, but here I am wearing nothing to associate me with the culture that I really wanted to be associated with, because the only association I had was being around it. I didn't look ghetto, I didn't talk ghetto, nothing was that about me that I wanted to identify with, so I just got really upset. College town, rich. This is a very small college town, very rich. It was super white, especially when we moved here. Now it's a little more diverse, but when we moved here, so white. And I basically was racist towards white people for a long time. I'm not anymore. I am finally accepted I'm white, but I pretty much took being with my boyfriend who's black to finally build confidence in so many areas, in being a woman, and being white, and he's helped with that immensely. we've had a lot of rough things, but like I give him a lot of credit because honestly, like having curves, being a woman, like that's all thanks to him that I could finally just be okay with it, and that's pretty recent too. Because like that's what he likes. So I mean, even though I'm not him, and I wanted to basically be what he is, like it's maybe even cooler to be him to be attracted to me. So I can be cool with that. But that's helped a lot. But yeah, my identity was in huge crisis mode, and that's how my eating disorder I think all started. But I also did find out my mom had an eating disorder for 10 years. Like, did I say that at the beginning? I think I did. So I think it's a lot genetic in what you see, and I was seeing some. I was very aware of food and stuff early, and like way early. So, and my mom like to. I always felt so lazy around her because she was so hyperactive. She never could relax. She's always taking walks. She's always doing that stuff. But then I just developed this really bad eating disorder when I was 14. As soon as we moved almost, I just kind of acted out. And a lot of it was all that anger. Basically, I would say image, but anger. Because, like, the motivation behind it was image and losing weight. But it was a lot of just, like, I was so angry at my parents and angry at everyone for, like, everything, and like hateful. I hated everyone I saw. Everyone I saw I hated. Like, I still get triggered going out and seeing all these college girls, but especially the college girls that were like in their little groups going to the bars and stuff. Like, I just really didn't like. And then at church I was so hateful and angry, and then at co-op I was so hateful and angry because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to associate. I didn't want to, nothing to do with it. And I was very quiet. And that was because I was very just not interested in any of it. So I kind of imploded and just stopped eating and made it a whole problem. And that became my whole life. And I basically... So it was like breakfast, lunch, dinner had to be, it started out like I just want to lose some weight, and at least I can look skinny, because I started to develop at this time and I was not okay with it. As soon as like a period semi started, I was like partly because like I hadn't been taught about my body, so I wasn't okay with that happening, so I immediately stunted it. So my period didn't happen until I was like 18 when I got better. So those years I just basically 4 years of just like, I think it was to partly to escape all these other identity problems. I just focused it on one thing that I could control, which was my weight, and I just basically minimized all my meals to like as little as possible. And then my mom introduced me to counting calories, which is what became a huge issue because she was trying to say you have to eat more calories. That's why she introduced me to that, but I turned it into a whole game of restriction, even more so. And then I became really anal about counting calories to the point, it wasn't even like I was eating healthy at that point. In fact, I didn't even want to eat home cooked meals or anything where I couldn't see exactly the number. Like, at first it was cool to estimate. I quickly was like, no, for some reason I had to know exact. I had to measure everything, weigh everything, and it had to be something I could do that and like look at the serving size. So I wouldn't even eat like home cooked meals, which I would say was one of the biggest problems for all 11 years I had an eating disorder, because even when I gained the weight back, especially when I gained the weight back, I still counted calories, and I couldn't stop that. Because the reason I couldn't stop that was because even when I gained the weight back, I was still obsessed with food. Because I had starved for so long, I just had a food obsession. So if I even thought I went over by a calorie, I would say, oh, I messed up, and I would want to binge and just go crazy eating, which I did many times. But like, I would start fresh the next day. And yeah, so that was so scary, the binging thing. Sorry, my hair's like, basically that kind of scared me so bad, so I had to be very anal about counting calories, and that was like the worst part of, in a way, about the eating disorder, because like I was so anal about that. I was scared of like, and I think because I restricted so bad for so long that like my brain wasn't thinking straight. I mean, and I had to do this regimen of exercises every day for years, and if I didn't do it, it was like my life was over. I had no identity. This became my entire identity. And like I just got so sick basically. And it helped that I was homeschooled. Like I could really focus. And this made me and my parents at war constantly, because they forced me to get help. Like I was seeing lots of counselors, but I wasn't ready to get better, so I wasn't gonna get better. And until I went to a place that I had no choice basically, but for at least 4 years it was just helpless, and they would try to force feed me, but I would, anytime they weren't paying attention, if I ate it or not, I would go hide it. Like I was starting to rebel in like the ways, only the eating disorder would have me lying like that, but I would hide the food to throw away later. I would run away if things weren't making sense. I would straight up just run away and like disappear for hours. And even in the middle of the winter, I remember like climbing a tree and just sitting there for hours because I was so angry all the time. And yeah, it was just bad. My mom and I were always butting heads because she was trying to get me to become an adult. That's the other thing. I didn't want to grow up. I was scared of everything. Scared to get my license. I was terrified of driving. I was terrified of taking the SAT. I was just pretty much a shell of myself, and I just constantly fighting her and rebelling in the sense of the only thing I could do, which was basically keep restricting because it's hurting them like I kind of wanted to, because I was so, I guess you could say, yeah, I kind of hated them. And yeah, so basically the eating disorder took over. I was scared of like smelling calories. I was scared of chapstick consuming calories. Like, I don't know, it was just really bad. So finally when I was 18, we went to a place and I got help. Basically, I went to, what was it gonna say? I think I mentioned this in my video. Like, there's lots of ins and outs and details during the eating disorder, but for the most part, that's really the gist of it. I was daydreaming about food all the time because I was restricting so bad. Like, there were times I would go through little phases of binging. Like the first summer after it started, I kind of did, but like I always would freak out and go back to like major restricting mode. And so finally, by the time I was 18, I went to a place. I did move back to Michigan for a little bit and went back to my dance company. I mentioned that in my other video, which ended up as a huge flop because I was so sick, and I was way too bad. That dancing became 100 times harder, and I was super weak, and I became even more obsessed with food. And so yeah, anyways, then I get help, but this time they like threaten to call the police if I don't come back because I'm like so dangerously, I guess, like suicidally, I guess, underweight that it's not safe, and they can threaten to call the police or something. So it was either gain weight outpatient or go inpatient. It was really scary, but yeah, I mean, I got really suicidal because that was like, I couldn't believe. The other thing is I never could like capitalize on my eating disorder. Like, I could never like brag. It's really toxic. I wanted some attention for all that work I guess I did to like get to look like I did, but I never got the attention partly because I didn't have social media. I didn't have my own phone. I didn't take pictures of my emaciated body. Like, the only pictures were the ones on my parents' camera, which I'm sort of happy about all that because I think that would have only made it worse. But again, I never really got what I wanted from it, so I wasn't ready to recover ever, and I didn't want to. But yes, they forced me to, or else blah 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 blah. So I just remember outpatient, I gained like 30 pounds, and that was to get to like the bare minimum healthy weight. So I was, without mentioning numbers, like really bad. Because even at that weight, I got to that weight, and I was still kind of obsessed with food, and that's what really triggered me, is like that didn't go away. And I was triggered like crazy by my image. I used to pull on my nose every day for years because I thought I had a pig nose. So actually I did permanently change my nose, and I semi-regret it now, because I feel like by now it might have naturally just made sense, but I had to pull on it every day for like 8 years. And another thing I was going to briefly mention is when I was like 10 or 11, I developed some problem like pulling out my eyebrows and eyelashes, so I had none. And it was just super embarrassing. I just couldn't control it. To this day, it's an issue. But the worst part about it, I would say, is I would draw my eyebrows on really crazy for some reason for years. And it was because I was really going through a lot. For some reason, I had to draw them on looking like sad. And I did this in the last 2-hour video when I talked about everything. But basically, the way I drew them on was like, my goal was like 45 minutes to talk about my whole life. So basically, I would draw them on like this. Like, just like, it would take me forever for some reason. But the gist was like, this shape was like always so weird and unnatural, and I used Sharpie, and it was just so bad, and it's so embarrassing. On top of having short, black, dyed hair for a while. Like, I don't know, I don't know if OCD is the right word, but just like compulsive, and I've also struggled with a lot of intrusive thoughts, so I think I have a little OCD. But I would just chop my hair off a lot. Like, I didn't want it to look, I hated it, to be honest, but I kept chopping it and dyeing it and doing all sorts of weird things to my image that I don't really understand still, but kind of glad don't look that crazy anymore. So yeah, the eating disorder took over, and then I wanted to mention, I don't know, there's some years I'm gonna super brief by. I did end up graduating college, but it took me 6 years. So when I was 18, I actually ran away to Flint. Some crazy stuff happened. Blah, 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 blah. It could have been a lot worse though, but I did run away to Flint, and I wanted something bad to happen. My parents, everyone acted like it was the end of the world, but really I only was there for like 2 weeks, and nothing even that terrible happened to me, but I wanted it to. It's kind of why I ran away there, but that was an interesting time. So I guess I could talk more in detail about some of these things in another video, but I'm already talking a lot. And then basically, I have said that word 110 times. I don't mean to be rushing, because that can make it uninteresting too, but there's just so much to talk about. And then I got through college, but I despised it, every last second of it, and it was all just because I had to do it. My parents forced me to do it. And so after 2 years, I did quit, and I ran away. I got a car, and I had barely just got my license, and I was not a good driver, and I was terrified of driving, but I just could not stay home anymore. And so I ran away back to Virginia. I got a job. I thought I was going to make my life there, but then the family I was staying with ended up really triggering me. I had all these anger issues. I'm not going to blame completely them, but I was kind of a mess, and I got really mad. They didn't treat me that. My friend basically stopped being my friend, and I was kind of a mess, but she wasn't that cool, so I got really upset. She said she didn't care about me, so I got really upset, and I isolated a lot, and I just got really depressed again. So then I ended up moving back home, kind of relapsing again in my eating disorder. Like, I always had it, but like relapsing and started restricting more. And that's when things got really bad, and after about 6 months of being home and not really doing anything, because I was anticipating I was going to go back to school soon, but I really didn't want to, but it was like might as well just finish it since that's what my parents really want me to do. So one day I was starting to get bad because I was restricting again. I started to really want to eat way too much again. So I just started going. My parents left for a week, and I had a feeling I would start to lose my mind, but not to that point, and I quickly lost my mind completely, and basically started to binge and purge so obsessively, like it was just out of control so fast because I just was so hungry all the time. So like my period, I think it stopped again at that point because I just like restricted that bad, and I don't know, it would come and go, but yeah, so I basically had this thought that I would overdose because I was so sick of my life. It was scary at this point. Living was scary. I didn't trust myself. I was out of control. I was just all over. So I was just like, why haven't I done this? I have to. It was almost just like I had no choice in it. But it was really impulsive. I had the thought and I just did it. I overdosed on a bunch of painkillers. Ended up I was like writing my suicide note, dude, just being crazy. Then I kind of had the flash in my brain, like, I'm not a Christian. I don't think I'm gonna go to heaven. And like it wasn't like a vision of hell, but like just a gut feeling and a panic all of a sudden of like hell right there. So I don't know. I wasn't fully wanting to die. I just couldn't live like that anymore. So I called my mom. They were like 10 hours away, and I was like, Mom, I'm sorry. I just totally overdosed on lots of pills. What do I do? And she like panicked, and they called an ambulance that picked me up. I was in the hospital all day. For some reason, the idiots didn't ask questions about like, maybe did you binge? Did you eat a lot of food? Any reason that maybe the pills wouldn't kick right in, because they didn't. I thought it was cool because I was like, I don't feel anything. That's very bizarre. I took a whole lot of pills. Nothing happened all the time. I was at the hospital. They had me hooked up. Nothing. I didn't feel anything. So I was like, cool, whatever. But then as soon as I was getting wheeled off to the psych ward, they kicked in. And I could do like an hour-long video just about this one night experience I had where I was 100% convinced I was going to die. After everyone thought I was okay, I was actually about to die from overdosing. But no, God got me through that night. And it's just more like the details, I guess. Like, I could go on and on about that night and like how awful it was. Basically the closest I've ever come to nothing about living in Virginia. I got in a really bad car wreck that I caused. I mean, that was really traumatizing, and honestly maybe even worse than this thing, because it was my fault and I thought I killed someone, but they ended up being fine. So I will say the worst thing you can go through is thinking you killed someone else, but this was maybe second to where I was okay, like thought I was good, and then now I think I'm about to die after everyone thinks I'm okay now and is relieved that I'm fine. But also, yeah, I really did think I was gonna die that night. I made a huge scene. They had to send everyone to their rooms because like I fell on the floor because I thought like it felt like my heart was, I don't know how to explain it. It was just like, it was immense pain in my stomach, like, and I couldn't breathe. I was having panic attacks. I fell on the floor, and like this lady screams at me to get up that I'm faking it. And I really did think they were going to let me die because I was like, they literally, this is the psych ward. They think I'm faking it. I'm not faking it. Like, so I was all hyperventilating. They hooked me up to a bunch of stuff. They were like, you have to calm down. I'm like, no, I'm not going to calm down. I'm going to die. Well, I couldn't talk like that. I was literally like, anyways, I had like my specific assigned nurse, and she sucked. Like, to this day I want 2 of these nurses fired because they were so bad and mean to me. But yeah, like more than fired. I want them like, I don't know, I did that. I did this to myself. But yeah, she like was rolling her eyes at me and telling me to go back to my room, and I like, my whole head was like blood was like rushing to it, and so I like slowly moved it, and I was like, no. And I remember just like viciously saying no, because I was like on my deathbed as far as I was concerned, and she was telling me to go to my room where I was just gonna like go to sleep or something and die, because I had a roommate and the lights had to be off and had to be quiet, and I was like, no, I need to focus 100% on survival, which meant breathing, which meant I needed to be able to, I wanted her to stick by me, and she refused. She refused to sit next to me. She walked away. So then I just spent all night like breathing in and out and focusing on every breath, and like not having another panic attack, because I realized that maybe no, like I had every reason. It was all these pills and I was panicking. But if I showed it, like, they were gonna probably like send me, it was just not gonna be pretty for me. They did not have my interest in mind. They thought I was faking. So I just had to focus every breath. I couldn't move my head, and I just had to sit still. And I wasn't allowed to make any phone calls, which was like the scariest part. I wasn't allowed to call the police. I was about to call the police. I wasn't allowed to call my family, so not till 6 in the morning. So I was just like, as long as I make it till 6 in the morning and I get through this, I will be okay. And it's about time I want this video to stop. But pretty much that was the last major story. Honestly, some of the most triggering parts of my life are after this time that I did this, because, okay, so that's where I made it through that night. I was like euphoric almost, because I couldn't believe it. Like when I started to be able to take more breaths, and it started to get to be 6 o'clock and after, and I was like, okay, at least now I can make a call. And the fact that it was getting easier to show, like, okay, I'm gonna make it, which was like unbelievable, because I was having all these flashes in my brain like it was over. That was the last time I was gonna, my parents, yeah, it was just really interesting. But yeah, then I stayed in the psych ward for about 10 days, and then I was willing to get treatment at this point. I was like, you know what, my eating disorder just destroyed my life. I'm willing to kill myself. It's like that out of my control, so I need help. I would admit I needed help at that point. So I went to a 9-month program, got treatment. They blew us up into balloons. We gained all this weight. I hated myself. Like, I mean, I still look at those pictures and I'm like, everything about me is like really triggering. I hate how I look. But I got the treatment. I was like sort of happy, but then my self-image was so low once I got out, and I still counted calories, so I still wasn't really recovered. My self-esteem was so low that that's when I went through like a whole phase, and I had told God, like, if I survive this, like, help me to like live my life for you. And then here I go again, looking outside God, trying to find answers. And that's probably the most triggering time of my life, because I was like, I did a whole lot in a whole little time, and it's all ick. Like, I'm just gonna call her a whole friend, like, so she was just not the greatest influence, but I can't blame her, because basically I did that myself, and it is how I met my fiance. But he was the only guy I liked, and that's a whole story. He ended up moving away for a year. I dated someone else. That's like the most disgustingly triggering year of my life. He moved back. I managed to get rid of that guy. I never even liked him. And then we started dating. So now we're engaged. But honestly, I need to end this video at this point. But that could be a whole nother story, because we've been together for like 5-6 years. But I don't know. That's where I'm with him now, and he's like the most important person you could say in my life. So I don't want to like talk about necessarily all the years that were really, 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 really bad, drugs and all this. But I guess I still haven't gotten to my full recovery yet. I relapsed. I mean, with him, I was drinking alcohol, and about a third of my calories were designated for drinking every night. So I literally did get so bad, because now I was like underweight, malnourished, not to an extreme, but like also alcohol was just like in my system all the time, and I was just panicking constantly, drinking tons of caffeine, smoking weed, just in a psychosis. And like, I did graduate college when we were together, but I was like pulling my hair out just during COVID, and it was like super anticlimactic. But I got through college, and then I started having to pay the bills, and I was so angry at him all the time, but so codependent and attached to him at the same time. It was just like my whole identity was confused, and I just became such a, I don't even know, like, so yeah. And then we broke up, and that's when I recovered. Basically, my eating disorder destroyed our relationship a lot, and I will say drugs helped me recover, because I basically had to get treatment again, and they didn't want us to smoke weed or drink, and that's when we ended up separating, because like I kind of implied like I did drugs with him, and that's a lot of what our relationship was. And they were like, you should probably distance yourself, so I kind of did, but then it turned into him completely leaving me and not speaking to me and blocking me, and that whole year I like almost died, was super suicidal, like basically did a whole lot of self-compromising to get him back, kind of. Did get him back after almost a year, and now we're together, and I'm having his baby. But I recovered at that point because I realized how much it affected our relationship, like my eating disorder. I wanted him to stop drinking, so, and I needed to stop drinking, and I did, and but the thing was, yeah, I had to recover from my eating disorder, I realized, and I went to this online treatment that my mom basically made me do, and I quit it in like 2 weeks, but I realized it helped me a little get on track, but I was so upset that we broke up during it, I couldn't even eat like what I was supposed to. So I was also smoking tons of weed, and weed does something to your appetite. So basically how I recovered in a way was because of withdrawing from weed. My parents made me quit smoking, so I'm having all these withdrawals, and because of my withdrawals I couldn't physically eat food. Like, I could only drink liquids, and I was like starving all the time, but I couldn't eat. Like, I would literally vomit, and it would just like, it was like all these withdrawals. So I used it to my advantage and was like, well, if I'm not worried about binging, then why am I counting calories? So if I'm way under the number I'm allowed to go to anyways, why not just stop counting them? So I did, and it actually worked, and I actually stopped counting calories for the first time. And with that, I gradually, as I was able to eat more, I made sure do not ever start counting ever for any reason, like now that you've stopped. So it started with I just couldn't eat. I was too depressed, withdrawing from drugs, that I just didn't even need to count, and I stopped counting. So then eventually I was able to integrate, eating better. And he was very much, anytime I did get him to talk to me, he would be like, very much like, you have to gain weight or else I'm never speaking to you, because I needed to gain the weight. He liked me better at a higher weight. He didn't like me being cuckoo, all obsessed with restricting. So yeah, so it was motivation right there, because I was like desperate to get him back. So yeah, that's how I recovered pretty much, and we've been together now, and so yeah, that's my recovery right there. And I really give God credit, because honestly I never thought I could do that. I never thought I could ever stop counting calories. Like, as much as I didn't want to be like that for so long, it was just like it was a humiliating thing about me I hated, but it was like, never did my eyebrows. I'm sorry for talking so fast, but I feel like that's better than making this an hour longer, which it was before. Like, I had to just get it all out. So that's my whole story. And like, I did quit working like a year ago. I never really figured out work. That is something, but I mean, I'm still not perfect or anything. But God has had a lot of mercy on me, is something I really want to end saying, because I mean, I don't know. Growing up, I'd like to think I've matured a little bit, but also like, I could have really, like, things, as much as they spiraled, God's kept me alive. now I have more hope for my future than I ever had. Like, I'm about to be a mom. I have a fiance. For my past being kind of as dark as it was, like, I finally have things to look forward to and, like, be excited about and hopeful for. Although I would like, with my background being so toxic sounding and everything and all the anger and hate, like, I do need to work on my forgiveness. Like, I need to forgive because I still get really triggered by everything in my past. I get really angry. I still struggle with relationships with people a lot, like, getting angry. Things to work on, but also I do believe, like, everything, like, I have gotten better is thanks to God, and I want to work on my relationship with Him and be a good mom. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I love you all so much. I don't like how this is ending. Like, I'm all over the place. I never did my eyebrows, but I also don't want this to go any longer. So just pray for me because I am still kind of nervous about. I developed more intrusive thoughts as of, like, doing a lot of different drugs too. Like, I did some psychedelics and stuff with I've done some psychedelics with my current fiance. Like, we don't do that now, but we did experiment for a little bit. I feel like that's when something started. Like, I started to get really bad intrusive thoughts of, like, and also the way I believe is, like, without God, I mean, I do believe Satan's real and evil's real. And, so I guess that's where some of my intrusive thoughts come from. Because, like, sometimes I feel like I'm evil and stuff, so, like, I scare myself. But that's where I just have to keep praying and asking God to be with me and forgive me and to have mercy on me and to save me. And not let the intrusive thoughts destroy me or anything crazy. But, they did kind of get worse. I think also because of how crazy I've acted. Like, I can't believe some things I've done. But yeah, that's part of that. But yeah, I think I can only pray / hope that I'll be a great mother. And, I'll leave this all in my past and I'll work towards being healthy for my child and a good example to him. And raise him up to be a great man. I love you guys. Thanks for listening. I probably won't make another video for a while, but if I do, like, this is hopefully the craziest I'll ever sound. I know this was all over and whatever. I don't feel like apologizing. Just thank you for listening if you did listen, and thank you for hearing my story. I would love to hear feedback, not feedback, but, like, especially if you can relate to anything. I mean, I'd love to hear about it. If you want to know more about something, that'd be cool, but I doubt you do. I talk so much, but yeah, I love hearing other people's stories as well. So, love y'all.